Ashes into tattoo ink facts. Cremation ink question and answers. Cremation ink is your loved one's ashes infused with high-quality, sterile tattoo ink. The infusion of the cremation ashes with the ink makes for the ultimate memorial tattoo, carrying your loved one with you always. What happens after I order cremation ink? Once you place your order for your chosen inks, we start to prepare a kit to send to you. The kit contains everything you need to return the ashes to us in safe and sturdy manner. The kit also contains instructions on how much of your lost loved one's ashes to return to us per tattoo ink bottle required. We usually dispatch the kits within 3 to 4 days and use fast postal services to get the kit to you as soon as possible. Once you receive the kit, follow the easy instructions and return your ashes to us for processing. Once we receive the ashes, an expert technician will follow your ashes throughout the processing, thus ensuring that the ashes are dealt with in a singular manner. Due to this technique, we can guarantee there will be no mix-up of an ashes, as each order is processed one at a time. We will then return your ashes-infused tattoo ink back to you, also including any ashes that were not completely used within the process. The turnaround time on our side is from 5 to 10 days, depending upon the amount of orders we are individually processing. Any ashes you send that we do not use in the process will be returned to you at the same time as your bespoke tattoo ink. Once you receive your bespoke ashes-infused ink, you can go to your local tattoo studio to get the tattoo you feel your beloved departed deserves. Is it not safe for a tattoo studio to just put the ashes into some ink? You need a homogenization of the cremated ashes to bring the ashes down to the size of the pigment molecules to get true infusion between the ashes and the tattoo ink. Whereas a tattoo studio would not have the capabilities to reduce and sterilize to the temperatures needed to achieve beyond hospital sterility standards. Tattoo studios utilize an autoclave to bring the sterilization to 121°C. Our process takes these temperatures much higher for a 100% guarantee of complete sterilization. At Cremation Inc., we don't just sterilize your ashes as they run through our systems, we run multi-layer sterilization processes to ensure each stage is clean and sterile and is to our high standards. We also remove and filter out all heavy metals, medicinal remnants, and other harmful contaminants from the cremation ashes to ensure you get a great and safe tattooing ink. Safety for your loved one's cremation ashes. Once you make your order, then a profile code is made that is tracked from you to us and then through the process, so at all stages we can ensure that you get only the ashes that you sent to us, infused into the tattoo ink, and any remaining ashes will also be returned to you. What you send you will get back, so you are safe in the knowledge that none of your loved one's ashes will go missing and not be returned to you. Each order that comes through is carried through the whole process by the same technician. This protocol and work ethic that we have initiated is to ensure that your loved one's ashes will be dealt with the same person who will track the infusion throughout the whole process. This guarantees that there is a respect and care in place to ensure the safety of your loved one's ashes. Aftercare for your cremation ink tattoo. How to look after a tattoo that has been done with cremation ink is the same as any other tattoo. We always recommend Bepanthen to our clients, and this applied twice a day for a week will keep the colors and quality of the ink fresh and bright for years to come. Feel free to follow the advice of your chosen artist for what their studio recommends for tattoo healing. Cremation Ink Tattoo Inks. A guide for your tattooist. We use only the best pigment to ensure that the tattoo lasts longer and stays brighter. The ink hold a very high pigment percentage to ensure bright, vibrant tattoos that don't look washed out. The ink is homogenized and the pigment molecule reduced to much lower molecular size than standard tattoo ink. This makes for much easier application and cleaner work when using bug pins and more stylized designs, etc., and reduces overworking of the skin. This ink can be used to recolor over old tattoos, as well as for lining, shading, and color packing, all basis applications in tattoo design and implementation. The ink, even when infused with the client's loved one's ashes, holds a very low viscosity, so is very easy for the tattooist to use, and can be used for all tattoo styles. Find out more at cremationink.com. Cremation Ashes Tattoo Ink. More facts about cremation ashes. Can cremation ashes be mailed? While some shipping and postal countries frown on the shipping of cremation ashes due to them looking like illegal substances, most countries will allow the shipping of cremation ashes, especially within the confines of the country. Can cremation ashes be shipped? Yes, but there is a gray line here which is interpreted by each country. The shipping of human body parts, etc., is not allowed, but for the most part, the shipping of cremation ashes is allowed. There may at times be cases where they are opened by the customs of that particular country, but this is due to them being tested to make sure they are not illegal drugs. Who owns cremation ashes? The ownership of cremation ashes, for the most part, is covered in a person's will. Although if there is no will declaring the fact or deed of ownership, the person who paid and collected the ashes is seen as the person who is responsible, and thus in turn, owning the ashes in the eyes of the law in most countries. Who do cremation ashes belong to? Whilst there is no true law attached to the ownership of cremation ashes in most countries, the common consensus is that in the first instance, the will should be checked for any declaration regarding ownership or requested ownership of the ashes. If none is stated, the person who is classed as the benefactor of the will is usually the person of choice. If that is unclear, the school of thought is that the person who paid for the funeral owns the ashes. Who has rights to cremation ashes? In the first instance, the rights to ownership of cremation ashes is given to the direct family. In some cases, this is not applicable, and so the rights are given to the person who has paid for the funeral and is picking up the ashes. For the most part, a lawyer or solicitor is involved to fulfill the will of the deceased, so if there are no arguments or issues with regards to the ownership of the deceased's ashes, then the lawyer or the solicitor is best involved. Where can cremation ashes be scattered? Since cremation ashes are organic in nature, they can be scattered within reason in most places. If your lost loved one loved a particular place, then this would be a fitting place to scatter their ashes. The only time there is a cost involved is if the scattering of the ashes is carried out on a legal basis within church grounds. Many people, to avoid the heavy costs implied by religious areas for scattering of the ashes on sacred ground, avoid this by scattering them at a quiet or private time. Just remember to check the weather if you're deciding to scatter ashes. Where to spread the ashes is a question only answered by the deceased. They may have a favorite place or scenario or even a favorite football team. Scattering their ashes in their favorite place, if possible, is one of the best ways to remember and honor your lost loved one. Some people choose to separate the ashes into portions, placing the ashes in various favorite places, while some will find a very beautiful place and scatter them there, the solitude and peace of the surroundings fitting towards the placement. Do cremation ashes smell? One of the first things that is evaporated in the cremation process is the smell of decay. The cremation process is to such a high temperature that the cremation ashes come out after the process with no smell attached. There may be some nasal sensitivity towards the very small particles of dust, but there should be no smell attached to the ashes when you receive them. Do cremation ashes float? Cremation ashes half and half float, but for the most part sink. The ashes are usually in a broken down state that is still large enough to penetrate the surface tension of the water, and so will sink. The smaller the particles, the slower they will sink to the bottom. The very small reduced ashes will not be able to break the surface tension of the water, and will stay on the top and float. This is something to keep in mind if you are contemplating scattering ashes in a lake, or the sea, or for that matter, any body of water. Do cremation ashes have DNA? No, for the most part, cremation ashes do not contain DNA from your lost one. DNA is a very fragile substance and cannot withstand the heat associated with a cremation. There may be a very small amount left from the process, held within the femurs of the deceased, that when broken down in the milling machines, leaves a small residue depending on the time used within the process. But overall, there is no true DNA residual within the cremation ashes. There are heavy metals and traces of chemicals deposited by medicine still within the ashes after the process. Find out more at cremationinc.com. What do cremation ashes come in? Cremation ashes are usually supplied in an urn, which is selected from the funeral director's choice. Now, with the advance of the internet and sites such as Amazon, urns are now available to everyone at a more reasonable cost. A cardboard urn with the ashes in a plastic sealed bag is one of the common ways it is delivered from the crematorium to the funeral director. What to put cremation ashes in? Many people go online now to find something to intern the cremation ashes into. There are plenty of options available as storage vessels for cremation ashes to be placed in. It all boils down to choice, budget, and with respect to what the deceased would have wanted. There is even the option of what is called a bio-urn, where the ashes are placed in biodegradable urn and you plant it in the ground. With regular nourishment and care, a tree will slowly grow from where you placed the urn. The cremated ashes will slowly be intaken by the growing tree, and your loved one will be a true part of nature. What looks like cremation ashes? When you get some sand from a beach dune, and you let it run through your hand, the heavy parts fall to the ground, and the smaller particles blow in the wind. That's how it reacts and behaves, having a very similar molecular size, with a coloration of the light gray embers that you find at the edge of a wood fire. What to do with cremation ashes? If you look through cremationinc.com, you'll notice it's orientated towards our service of placing your beloved's cremation ashes into tattoo ink, a service that we do for clients from all around the world. On top of this, we also cover some of the various other options of what to do with cremation ashes. You can turn some into a diamond, have the ashes mixed with oil paints and a picture painted of either them or a memory that celebrates their life. Mixed into resin and formed into jewelry, mixed with glass, and a necklace formed, the list goes on. What to do with cremation ashes UK? A huge proportion of our clients comes from the UK and USA, as Cremation Inc. is known for its experience and expertise in this field. With the UK and USA populations experiencing a huge surge in consumers, as well as a much higher level of tattoo studios to choose from, our service fits in nicely with the remembrance of a lost loved one, with a quality of professional tattoo results. What to do with cremation ashes Catholic? The Vatican issued a decree in 2001 that said that they viewed cremation as a contemporary phenomenon in virtue of the changed circumstances of life. The Church has no issues with the concept of cremation, the issue is the cremation ashes. The belief is still that the ashes must not be separated or scattered, instead they should be kept as whole, placed in a vessel, and interned into a place of religion, such as a church or graveyard. How do cremation ashes look? They look like very fine sand, with a light gray appearance, although in some cases, there is a slight yellow hue to the ashes. But for the most part, light gray with darker gray speckles as well. How are cremation ashes packaged? They come from the crematorium in a plastic sealed bag within a cardboard urn. The funeral director will then place the ashes in a loose format into the vessel of your choosing. You will usually be given the option to have the urn sealed if you wish. If you have no choice and have decided to scatter, or feel the expense of an urn just for the scattering process is not applicable, then they will be handed over in a plastic bag, contained in a cardboard box. How are cremation ashes buried? If your loved one's ashes are to be buried in a church or graveyard, then the church will try and insist on the ashes being buried in an urn of some form. A natural urn, like wooden, is one of the best, as it is good for the environment and over time will biodegrade back into the earth, taking your beloved ashes back to nature. If this doesn't appeal to you, but you still need to use a natural urn, place the ashes in a plastic bag so that when the box disintegrates, then the ashes will stay in the same spots and remain untouched. How to divide cremation ashes. Ask the funeral director to make sure that the ashes are in a plastic bag in the main urn, so it is easier for you to handle the ashes and that the ashes get handled the least. Then the best way to divide cremation ashes, if an equal division of the ashes is needed, is to get the number of urns for each person. Then take the ashes out of the main urn and weight the urn, put the ashes back in the urn, and weight the urn again. Jot down this measurement. Take the weight of the urn from the urn and ashes figure, and this is the weight of the ashes. Divide by the number that the ashes are to be shared into, and that is the divided total. Then just place each person's urn on the scales, and slowly on a draft-proof room, place the ashes in the urn till the desired weight is reached. This may sound extreme, but is the best way to stop family arguments, etc., with regards to the division of cremation ashes. Remember, these are low times for everyone, so a peaceful resolution on division of the ashes is best for everyone. Find out more at cremationinc.com. More cremation ashes help from cremationinc.com. How to plant cremation ashes. Depending on what you want the ashes to do, whether you want them to disperse into the ground over time or stay put. Most people will use a wooden urn and place the ashes in it loose if they wish for the ashes to disperse into the ground. If they wish them to stay put, then a ceramic urn, if the place of burial approves it, or wooden urn with the ashes in a plastic bag will keep the ashes from dispersing and staying in place. How to transfer cremation ashes to an urn? The most refined way to transfer cremation ashes is to buy a large-mouth funnel with a large width tube. Make sure the urn is large enough to take the amount of ashes. Then in quiet area and with the windows closed, also no kids or dogs running around, and take your time and transfer the ashes to the urn. Make sure to slowly pour the ashes into the funnel to not make the ashes go airborne. How to preserve cremation ashes? There is no real need to preserve ashes, as they are by the nature of the cremation dry and initially bacteria-free. If the urn is sealed, then there should be no issues in the preservation of the cremation ashes. If you want to suspend them to preserve them, you can mix them with resin to keep them in place, but for the most part a nice seal-able urn should keep them in a preserved state. How to store cremation ashes? The storage of cremation ashes is usually achieved by placing the ashes into an urn. These can be bought from the likes of Amazon or eBay. If you want a secure sealing urn, but the urn of your choice isn't seal-able, then a small seal of clear sanitary sealant. Choose sanitary sealant as an antibacterial, then just run a simple thin bead of silicone underneath the lid and let it set. This should, if done right, make the urn sealed, but give you the ability that if further down the line you want access, then you can just cut the sealant and extract whatever ashes you need. How to spread cremation ashes? The spreading of cremation ashes can be a very emotional time. There are a couple of things to make sure of to make the day perfect. Wherever you have decided to spread the ashes, wet a finger and hold it up. When you can feel a chill on your finger, this is where the wind is coming from. Make sure you turn the other way when spreading the ashes, this way they will spread in the wind, and not all over yourself or any other people. The best way to spread them is imagine there is a young child 10 feet away from you, and you are on your arm softly throwing a ball to him. This should be perfect in achieving what you want, which is a respectful and dignified way to spread your loved one's ashes. How to handle cremation ashes? Whenever we handle cremation ashes, we always do it with respect and dignity. You must remember that this is a dear loved one, and this is the elements of a life. care, and compassion are the morals that funeral directors take when handling cremation ashes, and this is justified in every way. How to dispose of cremation ashes? If you wish to dispose of cremation ashes, remembering they are the elements of a loved life, then find a place that is peaceful and beautiful and dispose of them there. This is the most dignified way to dispose of cremation ashes, respecting what it is you're holding and doing a loved one proud and making sure they are spread in a beautiful place. Why are cremation ashes white? The high temperatures that are incurred in the cremation process will carbonize the molecule. For the most part, the carbonization will render the bone fragments white. The same as when you place wood in a high-temperature fire, there will be white ashes remnants in the fireplace. Obviously, the cremation process is a lot hotter. Are cremation ashes toxic? No, they are not toxic, but they may have heavy metal residue, medicine, and other foreign bodies from the person's life and cremation process. Therefore, Cremation Inc. makes sure that we take the sterilization of the ashes to a much higher temperature to ensure the ashes are free of all elements that may cause harm. Are cremation ashes mixed? No, the process denotes a clean system for cremation. Any modern Western cremation will have one body in a burning chamber and set to a set automatic process. Once the process has finalized, the chamber is left to cool down. Then the ashes that are left on the grill, including the undertray, are removed and collected up. They are then placed in a ball mill, which gives the ashes the smaller regular sizing. Once this is finished, then the ball mill is turned over on its stand, and the ashes are collected into a plastic bag and then placed into a temporary transportation receptacle. The ashes are then shipped to either the funeral home or yourself. The whole process is made to make sure that your loved one's ashes are exactly that, your loved one, and nothing else. There are even more questions and answers at cremationinc.com. More facts about cremation ashes. Do cremation ashes have bones? Yes, cremation's ashes, for the most part, are mainly composed of bones. The cremation ashes you receive will have no distinguished features in them that looks like a bone, as after the process, the bones are placed in a cremation bone milling machine that reduces the size of the ashes to presentable size. There is no need to request the reduction of the bone particle size, as for the most part, they are reduced within the same room as part of the actual cremation process. Do cremation ashes contain DNA? Due to the very fragile nature of DNA, cremation ashes are classed as holding no DNA, but on a forensic level, there may be a very, very small amount left that was protected in the creation process that was held in the deceased person's femurs. The amount of residual DNA is dependent on the timing and heat process carried out by the chosen cremation process business. The longer and higher the temperature used in the cremation process, the more chance of there being any residual DNA left behind. Most modern-day crematoriums utilize protocols which remove any DNA from the cremation ashes. Do cremation ashes include coffin? The wood in a coffin will not withstand the temperatures produced in the cremation process. There may be some small amounts of the coffin included in the ashes, such as minute amounts of oils, but that are not visual to the eye. The fixings of the coffin, such as the tacks for fixing the linings and handles, etc., may be included in the remains left after the process, but the crematorium technicians will remove these with magnets and also any handles and visual remnants of the coffin by hand. They strive to make sure the ashes you receive are purely that of your loved one and nothing else. Do cremation ashes have to be buried? Cremation ashes and what you do with them is completely up to you. There is no need to bury them if you feel the need not to. A lot of people keep them in urns or scatter them. The only time that burying ashes should be a thought is if the lost loved one held religious beliefs that recommend burial of the ashes on the understanding that in their religion, this brings relief to the soul. Roman Catholic is one of the religions that recommend burying cremation ashes in sacred ground. The pricing for this varies, but as an example, in the UK, for the cremation ash to be interned in the ground, and a blessing by a priest, is about £750. Can you split cremation ashes? If you're wondering if you can split cremation ashes, then yes, you can. There are a couple of ways to do in a dignified manner, if not requested to be done by the funeral director. Make sure you cover a table with cling film, so every possible spilt bit can be re-interned into a container. Make sure no children or animals are about and the windows are closed. Then, for a more accurate way of splitting the ashes, weigh the containers to be used, and place the required amounts in each receptacle, till they are either split in a fair amount, or into the required amounts. Can you take cremation ashes onto an airplane? Taking cremation ashes onto a plane is not usually an issue. The issue is the customs officers in the country you are leaving and arriving at. Carrying a large container of powder through may raise some suspicion, so the best thing to do for peace of mind is to speak to the airport and ask them if there will be a problem. We had a personal friend who wanted to be returned in ashes form to Iceland, and we got rejected by the airport. So another friend just said nothing, but did take a death certificate and ID of the departed if this was problem, and had no issues on either end. They would never take them off you forever, but you may have to pay for them to be returned back to your home address. Can you post cremation ashes? Cremation ashes are mailed to some funeral directors, depending on where the process took place. International posting of cremation ashes can be a gray area with some countries due to their view on the laws with the ban on mailing of human body parts. For the most part, and for 95% of the countries in the world, they will have no issues posting ashes. Make sure you add a return to sender address, so if the receiving country's customs refuse to allow the ashes into the country, they can safely return them to you. Can you put cremation ashes in a tattoo? Placing cremation ashes into tattoos is where we at Cremation Inc. specialize. With over 10 years' experience in this very bespoke service, we deal with clients from around the world, making their desire to have their loved one's ashes placed in a tattoo to stay with them forever. Once you place an order, we will ship you a kit for you to return to use with your loved one's ashes in. We only need a small amount, and we then process the cremation ashes in a way that guarantees there can no mix-up of ashes. Then your loved one's ashes, after one last sterilization of many, the ashes are infused into the tattoo ink. This is then returned back to you, as well as any of your loved one's ashes we did not use in the process, and you can go to your local tattoo studio, and they will use the ashes to create the ultimate memorial tattoo to honor your lost loved one. There are even more questions and answers at cremationinc.com. Cremation Inc. and cremation ashes facts. Are cremation ashes mixed UK? The modern crematoriums of the UK make sure that no cremation ashes are mixed. The process is well governed and is as follows. Once the body is removed from the altar, it goes into a processing room, where the casket is placed in an automated cycle cremation chamber and initiated. Once the cycle has taken place, the chamber is left to disperse the heat and cool. Once this is achieved, the remains are removed from both the under tray. The remains are then placed in a ball mill, which will reduce the remains to a conforming overall size. The ashes are then placed in a plastic bag that has all ID references on them to maintain protocols, and then placed in a temporary urn, ready to be shipped to where they are to be delivered to the bereaved. Are cremation ashes mixed with others? There are protocols in the modern crematoriums in place, where the body is identified and tracked through the whole process. They can track the ashes through the whole cycle of delivery. Also, due to the systems in place that follow, one automatically cleaned chamber is used per client, with the cleaning cycle removing all elements, and then being placed straight into a dedicated clean ball mill. This is emptied into plastic bags, where the ID of the client is already registered, and then the remains are placed into a box with the details on again. No one wants to bear the thought of their loved one's ashes not actually being theirs. That's why these protocols are in place, to ensure the bereaved get the remains of their loved one. Are cremation ashes sterile? No, they are not. Only after processing by Cremation Inc. are they truly sterile. The heat of the cremation process will remove and destroy all bacteria, and so yes, they are sterile, but everything in a crematorium, whilst exceptionally clean, is not sterile. There is no sterility protocol in place in a crematorium, and they don't have to adhere to any sterility laws or regulations. The ball mill that is used to reduce the size of the remains is not sterile, and they are not placed in a sterile bag. When we process the cremation ashes to create our cremation tattoo ink, we sterilize the ashes multiple times throughout the process to ensure that the ashes are perfect for putting in your tattoo. Cremation ashes in glass. As well as our bespoke service of placing cremation ashes into tattoo ink for you to use at a tattoo studio of your choice, some people do other things with the ashes. Ashes in glass is one of them. This can be done in two ways, either via a sandwich of glass, with the ashes placed in the center to be on display, or where the ashes are rolled into the glass, the ashes becoming infused within the molten glass itself. Both ways with today's artisans make for fantastic pieces of art, whether it be small like a necklace or larger like vase. Cremation ashes to diamonds. Utilizing the same processes and similar equipment to reduce the ashes into a much smaller molecular level, the ashes are placed in a former to produce a pill of the ashes to be used. This is then placed into a machine that invokes incredible pressure on such a small area, trying to replicate the pressures under the ground where diamonds are formed. They also at the same time use incredible levels of concentrated heat to recreate the temperatures within the Earth's core. The process through the pressure and heat over time forms the carbon into a diamond. They will then pass it to gemologists, who will polish the diamond. We have seen multiples of these, and they are incredibly expensive to have done, but they do look like perfect diamonds. Cremation ashes in tattoo ink. Due to Cremation Inc.'s ongoing expertise in this field, we class ourselves as one of the leading world suppliers of cremation ashes infused tattoo ink. We have worked with clients providing ashes tattoos for over 10 years and have a team that is dedicated and respectful of all the handling and aspects of working with cremation ashes. Feel free to look over our site for more details on the process and how to get an ultimate memorial tattoo. Cremation ashes in blown glass. There are two methods for this style of ashes incorporating that the glass blower can utilize. The first is to roll the glass in the ashes whilst in the process of blowing the glass. This will keep the ashes embedded in the surface of the glass. The other is placing the ashes into the blown glass itself and either placing them down the blowing tube or forming a bubble, cutting the glass, placing the ashes inside, and then reattaching and forming a closed glass lid for the client. Both look stunning and are a beautiful tribute to a loved one. Find out more at cremationinc.com. More Cremation Inc. facts from cremationinc.com. Cremation ashes on flights. Most clients we have spoken to, when it comes to taking their loved one's ashes onto a flight, they have spoken to their flight operator with regards to any issues that could arise from the flight, i.e. customs, etc. The most common way that people have taken ashes onto a flight is to place the ashes in the plane's hold and not take them through customs due to the possible checks by customs. There is the ongoing very small risk of the ashes going astray with your bags, so if you so want to take them through customs, contact the appropriate customs to see what paperwork is going to be needed to make the traveling with the ashes through the customs areas on both sides easy. Cremation ashes to jewelry. Today's modern jewelry artisans can create a vast array of designs in varying elemental metals. Whether silver matches your look or the luxury of gold, cremation ashes can be incorporated into most aspects of the jewelry design. For most people, the ashes are held in resin or glass, and then an intricate design befitting of the lost beloved are used, and a gold jewelry fitting is fitted around the glass or resin to hold it firm. Cremation ashes in water. If you decide to spread the ashes of your loved one onto water, then you'll find that a lot of the ashes will float on the water. This is due to the molecular size of the ashes. If they are not large enough to break the water's tension, then they will float, and the heavier parts will slowly sink to the bottom. The incorporation of a clear feature, such as glass, with the cremation ashes in the water, then this technique of displaying your loved one's ashes will be too cloudy to be classed as beautiful, resembling gray tea when shaken. We do occasionally get asked if ashes can be utilized within a water display, but always recommend against it. Cremation ashes in concrete. Cremation ashes in concrete is sometimes used to incorporate cremation ashes within the actual concrete, which is then placed in a mold for the client to keep either indoors or utilize the waterproof aspects of the concrete and have a statue made with their loved one's ashes incorporated to keep outside or place outside in their loved one's favorite place. It can be done quite easily at home, adding the ashes in part with the concrete. Don't overdo the amount of cremation ashes to not affect the structural integrity and enhanced lifespan of the concrete. Cremation ashes in ocean. Whereas the burial at sea of a body is wrapped up in a world of legal paperwork and jurisdiction, the scattering of ashes into the ocean can be just as beautiful and inspiring. Make sure that the boat is moving, then the ashes are scattered from the back, and try and do it on a calm day. With regards to burial at sea, the tide will take the flowers a lot farther than you would imagine. Flowers from burials and ashes scatterings at sea in Gibraltar would commonly be found over 200 miles away, washing ashore on beaches in Mojácar, Spain, as our friends witnessed multiple times whilst living in Spain. Cremation ashes in a tattoo. At Cremation Inc., we have years of experience in placing cremation ashes into a tattoo. Now, with the ability of this service being available worldwide, we are working with clients from multiple faiths and varying countries. The acceptance of tattoos, added with the expansion of people's scope on what to do with cremation ashes, means we can supply you very high-quality tattoo ink with your loved one's ashes truly infused into the ink, which gives you the ability to choose any tattoo artist you wish to do memorial tattoo design. Check out our site for more information on not only the process, but also about us and our vast experience in this bespoke industry. Cremation ashes to glass. There are two main techniques for incorporating cremation ashes into glass. The first is to form a hollow in the glass egg and insert two ashes, sealing them in there in the process. The other is the incorporation of the ashes into the actual glass, either by introduction or rolling the glass into the ashes themselves. Both make for beautiful remembrance pieces if an ornament or glass trinket is what you are after. With the ever-expanding skill of the glass artisans, placing cremation ashes into glass is becoming slowly popular with some clients. Whilst the price is high, there is no degradation of the glass, and so the piece can be kept throughout the generations. Cremation ashes to tree. Cremation ashes placed inside an urn, which has the seedling of a tree and is now available. We recommend to our clients that the ashes that we do not use when we put ashes into tattoo ink, that they either place them back into the urn, or use them in a bio-urn, as they are called, as not only are you adding your beloved back into nature, but you are also starting a great natural memorial for your beloved. The sign of a good person is someone who plants a tree, knowing they will never enjoy its shade. There are even more questions and answers at cremationinc.com.